And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome. It's time for another exciting episode of IT Career in Australia. And tonight's topic is creating a culture of ownership to attract top talent in IT industry. Thank you so much for finding some time to join me this evening. Please don't forget to introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know what you do and join our conversations with your questions and comments. Or at least, as usual, say hi in the comments so I know that you're here. I know that you're listening. And it's, make me feel good that you're here. I'm Jana Martins, if you don't know me yet, and I'm currently working in IT consultancy. So I'm passionate about IT industry and learning more about in and outs of, tech, and always eager to share my latest findings with you on this channel. So again, tonight we're going to talk about the creating culture of ownership to attract top talent in tech industry. And Mel is going to share her insights, experience, and a really interesting model that explains it all. So please tag and share this video with your colleagues and friends who need to hear this. And before I'll pass it over to Mel to introduce herself, just want to quickly remind you the usual stuff. We're streaming on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If you missed the stream, no worries. Guess what? You can subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch all the replays there, because I go live every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Melbourne time, so with various experts from my network. And we're talking about quite broad range of topics about IT industry, IT careers, job search, and just general in and outs of tech industry in Australia. If you want to make sure that you get notification about future events, make sure to join my meetup group. You can also network with other like-minded people there. So use this live stream as your network opportunity as well as learning new information. So you can ask questions, as many questions as you like on any platform, but please stay on the topic. And as usual, the most active participants get some nice surprise at the end of the stream. And again, just want to remind you, please introduce yourself in the comments, because nice people saying hi, and not staying silent. And passing on to Mel to introduce herself, please.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Mel Kendell. I've spent a lot of time in the tech industry, mostly as a contractor, and I've worked in a lot of organizations. And one of the things I did while I was working out how to deliver projects that weren't exactly set up very well in a lot of cases, was decide to actually study organizations and work out what was stopping them from being functional. And this was one of the things that I came up with, was that most organizations do a really, really poor job of creating the conditions for ownership. So there's been a lot of talk lately about autonomy, which is great, but it's still not quite ownership. And there is a difference that we will come into later.
Perfect. Thank you, Mel. So, okay, I guess let's just dive straight into it, because we have a limited time and we both love talking. So we need to make sure that we at least go through a few things today. So I guess, you already touched on about, why you're talking about this topic today. But I guess maybe give us a bit of a, a bit of a story, why kind of you come up with that model that we're gonna to discuss, and what inspired you.
One of my key things, I hate waste. I absolutely hate any kind of waste. And to me, the greatest crime is the waste of people's talents. And most organizations just don't know how to get the most out of their people and to make their people want to bring what they can do to the organization. So that's one of the key things, is having ownership and creating those conditions of ownership so that the organization gets the best from their people, and the people can thrive.
Yeah, definitely. And there is so many angles we can, talk about it today. But I think, the first thing we want to do, we'll try to go through, through the model.
Yep.
And I guess the reason we're going through this model today as well, I met Mel at one of the business agile meetups, and we were talking about basically some ways to improve, workplace and make it more safe, not only from the health perspective, but from also like psychological safety perspective. And that's this topic come out. So please, Mel, what is ownership? Why are we talking about ownership, and why we even think that it's, important for organizations these days?
Yep. Cool. So ownership is basically made up of three things in balance. So accountability, authority, and responsibility all need to be in balance to arrive at ownership. The top two, accountability and authority, are managed by the organization. They set up the environment in which those two things are in balance. And the last one, responsibility, is provided by the individual at their discretion. So people who are disengaged will not bring their responsibility to the table, and therefore you don't have ownership. So that's
Makes
basically
sense.
that's the model in a nutshell. So one of the things I've found with certain people who know the RACI model really, really well is that they struggle with this idea of accountability and responsibility being their actual English definitions, and that they want to keep putting it into RACI accountability and responsibility. No, we're not splitting those two things in the way that RACI does, which I've never understood. Even though I know the RACI model, how can you be only responsible or only accountable for the same thing in two separate people? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. Yeah. So we're looking about how we can basically combine all these things together.
Yeah.
And as you already mentioned, those first things, accountability and authority, that's something that organization can influence. So I guess let's talk a little bit about that.
Yep. So accountability, most people kind of get what that's about. So it's basically the things that you are expected to do. So in delivery terms, that's complete your tasks, raise issues, enlist help at a task level, meet deadlines, all that sort of stuff. Basically, your job. But it's also accountability for your behavior. So are you conforming to norms? Are you adjusting to context? Are you kind of being nice, basically? So people are expecting a certain type of behavior, and that's what you're accountable for. On the other side, the authority side, this is often the thing that's missing in a lot of organizations. It's not positional authority. It's the things that you are allowed to do. So in delivery terms, are you allowed to negotiate or refuse work? Are you allowed to have access to and spend resources? Are you allowed to enlist the help at an outcome level rather than a task level? And are you allowed to set your own pace? So often organizations are like, you need to be quick, fast. And you're not even allowed to say, but hang on a minute, I don't have the time to do what I need to do. And again, there's also authority in behaviors. So am I allowed to basically say, challenge what's happening? Am I allowed to voice, coming back to that psychological safety thing, am I allowed to have those conversations? So that's authority. which is not how people generally think about authority. And there's a big difference between authority that's granted to you from a positional aspect, and taking authority for yourself. So you need to be able to have those conversations to be able to take that authority.
Is it, I don't know, is it similar when you're talking about taking authority? Is it similar like setting up some boundaries?
So
Or is it?
so it's things like there's a lot of talk about, everyone can be a leader. And leadership is taking authority. So it's not necessarily, power that's granted to you because of the position. It's just stepping up and having those conversations.
Yeah. Because, I'm just looking at the, negotiating or refusing work. For me, it's also kind of sounds like setting up those sort of boundaries. And
yeah, that's a good point. And it depends on the organization how safe those conversations are, or whether the corporate antibodies will reject you.
That's true. Yeah. And but I guess we kind of saying that's the two things that managed by organization. But I guess it doesn't mean that it's fully managed by organization. There is still the part that the individual can take to, to voice their authority or state their accountability.
Yep.
One more circle there.
Responsibility. So there's basically different ways of expressing your responsibility and different value placed on those different expressions, depending on what kind of environment you're in. So in a stable environment, people often see people take responsibility by being conscientious, team player, reliable, all that sort of stuff. Whereas in a more volatile, complex situation, the things that get valued are things like innovative, collaborative, invested, all that sort of stuff. And then there's the kind of pay to play values that are kind of generic across the board of honesty, integrity, the kind of things that you'd often see as values slapped on walls. They're kind of at the most basic level, they don't actually mean anything in terms of corporate values, because you would never want the opposite.
Yeah. So
it
kind of almost like a common sense in a way.
Yes. Oh no, we value people who are dishonest. No.
Probably not that often, yeah.
No.
Cool. So that's all sort of making sense, and we're putting it all together. That should give us that sense of ownership.
Yeah.
If it's all in balance. And I guess based on that, so what I guess the point is, like, if we have it all in balance and we have an ownership, that people probably enjoy more to work in our organization. Is that, is it the correct?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, as I said, it's twofold. The organization gets more about its people, but its people can thrive if people have the right conditions to take ownership, and ownership is taken.
Yeah. And obviously it sounds all good, and we just need these three components. Make sure that we set up some authorities, accountabilities, make sure that people have sense responsibility, and it all should be good.
Yep. Yes, so often does not happen that way.
In theory.
Yes.
But obviously there is a lot of components there, and as we know, in a lot of organizations, it will be a lot of disbalance around those components. And I guess, that's what we're going to talk about. What we're going to talk about is disbalance. and what the leaders can do to bring it back,
Yeah.
so that we can bring this sense of ownership to people. But I guess before we get there, do you think that everyone naturally, when they want to work for organization, they do want to, I don't know, they want to feel that sense of ownership? Is it like
Yeah, I think
everyone want it, or is it or is it a nice to have?
so one of the things with COVID and people getting to work at home was that people often were allowed to, even without having very powerful jobs, they became empowered to do things like decide how to spend their time, which is an ownership thing. They now had ownership over their time. So yeah, I think almost across the board, I can't think of a situation where ownership is not wanted.
Yeah. And obviously, we can see it a lot now. Then people need to come back to the office. But if they already plan their life, especially I think I see it a lot with people with the kids who already sort of plan their life around, school pickups, drop-offs, and things like that. They can finish some things in the evenings if they need to, drop kids somewhere, and so manage their own time. It's so quite hard sometimes to go back to 5 days in the office and completely restructure the routine.
Yeah. So they've had a taste of authority over their own time.
Yeah. And now going back. Okay, so let's talk about those bits and pieces when things happen to be out of balance. With obviously three different examples here. The first one, obviously, what happens then? We have accountability, they have responsibility, but we're missing the authority.
Yeah. So this is the most common scenario. People who are naturally high responsibility will try to meet their accountabilities, and they will probably try to do things better than they are allowed to within the constraints of just having accountability and no authority. So 9 times out of 10, they will be seeking to get more authority to actually change things, to improve things, to actually make their lives easier. What tends to happen is that they get blocked from making those changes, and people who have high responsibility will either burn out or leave. So if they stay, they'll get disgruntled, they will become cynical, all that sort of stuff. People with low responsibility will basically just turn up and do as little as possible to meet their accountability. And that's where you get presenteeism and very passive participation or non-participation.
And how do we fix it?
Wait for that one.
Let's look for all the disbalances before we talk. We actually have a quick comment from Felipe. I think it's when we will start talking about people feeling the sense of authority about the time. Might sound scary to some people. Maybe some preparation is required for that change if it's far from the current reality. But it makes a lot of sense. Great one, thanks. Yeah. Oh, Mel, I can't hear you for some reason. Or is it me? No, I can't hear you. Here we go. Don't you guys love that the things go live? And what about now? I think, are you muted now? So,
is that better?
You're back.
Here we
go. You're back. Don't we love the technology?
Yeah, for some reason the headphones just decided to give up the ghost.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah. So, in response to Felipe's question,
Yeah.
yeah, any change needs careful management. So, yes, you wouldn't just dive into this, particularly actually in terms of helping people up the food chain relinquish control. That's the difficult change.
Yeah. Careful steps.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we talk about how to fix those disbalances, let's talk about all possible disbalances. So yeah, we can miss the authority, but then here we go. We have another scenario. So I think that scenario is not that bad. You know what I mean? If I have the authority and responsibility, sounds pretty good for me.
Yeah. So one of the things that keeps coming up in conversations is having autonomy. And this is a situation where you basically have autonomy, you have all the authority, and you hopefully have some high responsibility, but you don't necessarily get held to account. What this sometimes can also lead to, though, is misalignment. So, sort of, you've got all the authority to go off and do what you want to do. They're actually going to be sort of a part of the whole? Is it going to increase the value for the whole organization? It can end up being a bit fragmented and a bit going off in all sorts of directions. So without the accountability piece, people will start to pursue their pet projects. They may or may not align with people that are upstream or downstream from them. So things can start to go a little bit awry. So autonomy is great, but it's actually not quite enough. So and for some people who have maybe a high responsibility but a Machiavellian streak, then they can start to wield power for personal gain, or start to basically try dominance games and all that sort of stuff. So yes, it sounds like it would be really good to have all the authority and no accountability, but in actual fact, it can create quite toxic environments if it's completely out of control. So
I guess it's
yeah.
more about teamwork in this case. So we're losing the teamwork if everyone just kind of have like high level of authority and yeah, as you said, pursue the kind of own objections that we of an agenda. So we're losing that sense of the teamwork and moving to the common goal.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got all the authority in the world, but you're actually your people are less bringing their responsibility, if they're low responsibility people, then they will just basically not even turn up. So you get a lot of absenteeism, that sort of stuff. It's it's not great.
From I guess, do you think it's more kind of not good from the organizational perspective or from the people perspective? So is more not good for organization to achieving goals, but you feel like it's the struggle for all members of the team?
It depends how out of whack it is, and it depends on how individual behaviors start to manifest in that sort of environment without being held to account. Some people basically start to hold each other to account, in which case that can kind of fill the void. So there's still an accountability there. But if that peer-to-peer accountability doesn't develop in the vacuum, it can get quite toxic.
Yeah. Okay. So it's basically like some examples that someone just start managing someone without actually any reason for that.
Yes, you could. Yes.
Okay, makes sense. Rose is actually saying hi. Long time no see. Long time no see you, Rose. So I haven't seen you at DevOps Talks. So last time. Here you go. Okay, and back to third scenario. We got all the accountability, we got all the authority, but we're missing responsibility.
So yeah, this is where people are basically given the perfect scenario, they're still not bringing themselves. They're not bringing their own responsibility into the picture, and it's basically misbehavior. So for other people who see this, and if it's allowed to continue, they see it as very unfair, and it can cause basically jealousy or envy in the team. And again, the good people will go, nah, sod this for a game of soldiers, I'm out of here. Because and we've all sort of seen the stuff about superstar assholes. You need to deal with them. Because for everybody else, it's just not fair.
And in this kind of scenario, so you feel like that part less dependent on the organization, and it's more dependent of the individual and their kind of personality and what their goals. Yeah. Okay. So I think we got a bit of an idea, what components you need and what can go wrong. But I guess the best part is how we can fix it.
Yeah.
And how we make sure that we actually keeping our culture in balance, that people don't want to leave and don't get burned out.
Yeah. So the most common scenario is all the accountability and no authority. So this is where we need to reduce the accountability overload and boost the authority. Making sure that accountabilities are very explicit. One of the things I often talk about is giving people outcomes to achieve, not tasks to perform. So the expectation is that they are going to deliver an outcome, not mechanically perform a task. Because if you only give them tasks, they can only do exactly what you tell them. And if you're not clear, they can't even do that. So whereas if you give them an outcome to achieve, they can actually come in and go, I can actually see a better way of achieving that outcome than you've actually given me as a task. And they can bring more of themselves to it. So spending the time to delegate properly by being really clear about what the outcomes are is one of the best things you can do to help to break the sort of the divide between accountability and authority. Some of the other things,
what would be a good example of it? I don't know. Do you have any particular example?
Not off the top of my head, no.
I don't know, I don't know. There's some sort of simple examples that comes to my mind. It's I don't know, when you have like, not really IT example, but when you have like sales goals, like you do have a sales goal, but often it could be like, you have to do 10 calls per day. But who cares how many calls you actually do per day? You can make one call and do the biggest sale, or you can do 20 calls and do no sales. So I think that's just sort of the example that comes to my mind straight away. I think that's recruitment agencies struggling with that one, and then all the candidates get pissed off because like, why this recruiter called me with a relevant job? Because they've been told to call 10 people today.
Yeah, and it's metrics is another of my hobby horses. But yes, people are very often the metrics that people use are inputs because they're generally easier to measure than outputs. So it is the 10 calls a day rather than the yes, we landed this sale or we strengthened this relationship. It hasn't resulted in a sale yet, but it's still important. Yeah, metrics are another absolute minefield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
I think we got the idea in terms of, you know, the how we can move from the outcome based into outcome based instead of task based. Yep.
So reducing the accountability overload, one of the key things is to create visibility of the work. So, you know, where are your people overloaded? I'm a big advocate of Kanban type systems where you limit the work in progress or process so that you can actually see what people are actually working on at the time and look at all of the busy work that people are doing that doesn't actually need to be done. So if you can actually start to bring that down by giving people visibility. So one of the things that often happens is that people have no slack in the system. They're 100% utilized and they're expected to deliver everything that's on their plate. And it's it's too much. It doesn't allow any room for thinking or creativity.
This is usually the hardest one because you know, what if you stuck between you know, your, I don't know, your board decided that that's need to be delivered by that day. You know, you kind of give everyone the task, you don't have a choice, it needs to be finished by that time. Like how to deal with that, you know what I mean? Like you would love to give the people that space to think and stuff, but it's just no time for that.
Yeah, and that's part of giving people the authority to negotiate. Because if they're expected to deliver 110%, which is often the case, it's too much. You can give people or you can expect people to put in extra if there's a deadline or, you know, something that's short term. You can't expect that kind of commitment from people all the time. It's just not feasible. It's asking too much.
Yeah, it's a deadline every Friday, you know?
Yeah, no. And again, I'm a big agile sort of proponent, all that sort of stuff. But the fragile, wagile, whatever it is, movement at the moment, you know, everything's crammed into a sprint, and it is a deadline every week or 2 weeks, and it's like, no, that's not what sprints were supposed to be about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what else we have there in terms of the reducing the accountability overload?
Yep. So reducing the accountability, as I said, make it safe to raise issues, to allow people to negotiate all that sort of stuff, and coming back to that utilization thing, don't reward excessive hours. It's, you know, the whole sort of being present seems to be the easiest thing for people to reward, and it's not sustainable. It's not tied to outcomes in any meaningful way. Just stop celebrating hours. Oh, you worked so hard. Oh, you know, I see the hours that you're putting in.
Yep.
If anything, tell them it's bad.
I actually recently watched a really interesting TED talk. I don't remember the name. It was something about working hard, and it was example there where the person been suggested basically. I don't know, like someone was working on some software and he's been told that now his job fully automated and they basically don't need him. And he has a choice of, keep still doing his task and working for the same salary, or go home and do nothing for a year and still getting his salary.
All right.
And it was some people who choose one and people who said like, no, I still will be working. And then they've been asked what they think about, whatever, let's call him, I don't know, John, who said, I'm going to keep working even if that task software can do my task. And people still felt like they have some sort of, soft space for John because he's hardworking, because he choose to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a massive cultural thing as well. So he's doing the task that automated and doesn't need to be done, but because he choose to work, we still kind of respect him for that.
Yeah.
And they still kind of get that quality of the hard working.
Yeah, the hours are not adding any value.
Yeah, so I find it's quite interesting, guys. I might find that talk and drop it into the comments, because it was a great example of how our culture kind of like celebrates something that in reality he's just basically performing tasks that no one needs. Yeah. And that's basically probably massive shift that not only that's not a shift that can be done on a company level. This is a shift that needs to be on the whole country level or whole world level.
Yes. Well, it can start with the team. So it can work at the all sort of levels to basically say deliberately, okay, we've put in a lot of hours. That's not what we want to be doing. So it's no longer going to be celebrated.
And it's actually sometimes reverse situations as well, when someone does something with ease. Those people who just make one call and something like sorted, and for some reason we don't like them, and we think like, they just got it too easy, where they're just efficient.
Yeah, there's a story about the locksmith who basically comes along and fixes the guy's lock in 5 minutes flat, and he says, oh, you need to pay me, I know, $500. And he said, yeah, but it was only 5 minutes work for you. And he said, no, you're not paying me for the 5 minutes work. You're paying me for the 30 years of experience that I've accumulated to enable me to fix it within 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yep. So, and I think that's those kind of examples that showing that often we, exactly what you said, we're rewarding not the outcome, but we're rewarding the effort kind of that been put in, the hours that been put in, and that's basically creates that sort of loop.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So on the other side, boosting the authority, it is, as you said, it's about making boundaries explicit and encouraging freedom within those boundaries. So it's so easy for people when they're trying to let go and give their people more authority. It's really hard to stop yourself from jumping in and doing it for them. So if somebody's not doing it as quickly as you want, or they're not doing it the way that you want, or anything like that, it's so easy to try and jump in and parent or rescue people to help them solve a perceived issue. So if they're going to make a mistake by doing it a different way than you would do it, don't jump in. That's really, really hard. It's so hard to not sort of kind of insert yourself into their learning journey. And Yeah, because you want, if you've tasked somebody with something, you often want it quite quickly. Again, getting back to the whole speed thing, because people are under the pressure and are doing too much and all that sort of stuff. So it's it's quicker for me to do it than to tell you what I actually want done, or I'll tell you how to do it, but I won't tell you what the outcome is, because it's just quicker for me. But that actually doesn't give people authority.
Yeah. But again, I guess it's also like if you're stuck in between two and like your bosses wanted that to be delivered, you're trying to delegate, you see that it's delayed and it's not getting done, and you just like give up and just doing it because you see that the timeline is not met.
Yeah. And this is, people have been denigrating managers for some time now, and it's one of the hardest jobs because you are stuck between a rock and a hard place, and people don't give managers enough credit. That being said, managers themselves need to take on some self-learning, because they're not going to get it from most organizations. Most people who go into management never get actual management training, such as it is, until they've been in it for 10, 20 years. Most people are thrown into management and with a real sink or swim situation.
Yeah, definitely. What else is there?
So let people do experiments. Set out some criteria for funding small bets or cheap to fail initiatives. So, you want to try this? Well, I don't necessarily agree, but how can you prove it to me with something really, really small? So how can you set up that kind of thing where, you may not see the merit in what they're talking about, but a small experiment might convince you. So how do you actually give them the space, the funding, whatever it is that they need at a very small level to be able to go, yep, well, we did the minimum viable experiment and that's the result we got. Oh, okay, you've now convinced me. Let's go and pursue it.
Yeah. Instead of kind of what we talk, like putting in risk a big project where a big deadline and things like that. Yes. So creating those environment of trying on a smaller scale.
So I'll give you a story. The extreme of this. I was at a position where I needed to create a business case for a project on which the only cost was my time as a project manager for 9 months. I was in that organization for over 2 years getting the business case up. So they paid me for over 2 years to get the authorization for my costs for 9 months. That's the opposite of small bets.
They tried.
Yeah, I did some other things while I was there.
Why not? Why not? Look, they were trying to give you authority.
Yes, and yeah, convoluted or approval processes are the absolute sort of opposite of giving people authority.
Makes sense. And I think there's one more point there, yeah?
So in order to give people authority, they need information. So they may not make good decisions if they don't understand the context and they don't have the information. So unless it's absolutely necessary, like HR information, all that sort of stuff, your default should be to transparency. So give people information to help them make the right choices.
And that kind of sounds like common sense, but doesn't work in reality. Because again, everyone in hurry wanted just to give the minimum minimum information and hope for the best.
Yeah.
James has quite a few questions. We might have time just to, take a few. So one of the questions he's asking, what happens when you have unqualified people hired due to nepotism and then whole management chain just accept it?
Yeah, go and work somewhere else.
Like Evan said in his live stream, change your company or change your company.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about, where the people have authority but no accountability. They're not being held to account for being qualified.
Yep. So, but giving the authority. I think that's quite a big question from James. Talking about KPIs, how do you manage importance of stats and metrics versus customer satisfaction? That's probably like the conversation for one more live stream. But if you would reply kind of in the short sort of.
All I can say is one of my mantras, which is be careful what you measure. Because metrics will change all sorts of behaviors, and often for the worst.
Yeah, and I think that's coming back to that setting up the outcome instead of setting up the task. And I think that's that KPI question is instead of putting the KPIs of I don't know, I keep coming to that example of sending 1,000 emails to actually getting one client. I don't know, what would be a good example in more technical role, not a sales role?
So and the typical one would be support tickets. Closing tickets, the number of tickets you close.
Yeah. Close.
Absolutely. Was the customer happy? Don't care. Close it.
Yeah. That's definitely the great example. I think NAP is doing it all the time with the customer client team. Just personal satisfaction. I couldn't hold it within.
I couldn't.
Sorry, people from NAP, but look, your call center.
I must admit, I have experienced that.
Just depends about I don't know how many thousand people in Melbourne, but look, I know, don't take it personally. It's probably your organization fault and they told you to close those tickets. So anyway, Mel, I'm just cautious about the time. We're getting to the 15 minutes mark of our stream, but we also wanted to talk about how to fix the responsibility bit. So we talk about obviously those ones, but what's happened with responsibility?
Yeah, we're going to put aside the authority without the accountability, because that's an easy one to fix if people are sort of willing to do it.
Yeah,
just give people more accountability. But responsibility is another tricky one, and that's all about making sure you actually hire the right people. So once you've set up your environment for people to thrive, make sure you're bringing in people with the right commitment to actually contribute. So typical hiring looks at skills, then aptitude, then attitude. And that's absolutely the totally opposite way of how you should do it. Because with the wrong attitude, you're not going to apply your aptitude to be able to actually accrue the skills that you need. So attitude first, then aptitude. Do you have the capability to gain the skills? It's most skills can be taught relatively easily if people have the right attitude and aptitude. So turn it on its head. Don't give out job descriptions that are just a list of skills, because that's not going to give you any information about what their attitude or aptitude is. Don't fall into some of the common biases when you're hiring, and it's very common to hire people like me. So it's, oh, we got in like a house on fire. Yes, they finished my sentences. They're just like me. Okay. If you have a whole organization of just like me, you've got no diversity, no possibility of coming up with innovative solutions, because you're all thinking the same thing. So look for people who are culture add rather than culture fit. So some of the other typical things, it's often an unconscious bias that people will look at men for their potential, but for women, they must have done it. So it's, women get put into positions of positions that they've already done. Whereas men are kind of like, oh, well, he's done that, so he could stretch to that. So try not
But
to do that.
also, it's females who tend to apply only to the position that they feel comfortable ticking more boxes. So there's, the common kind of statistics around,
Yes.
ticking the skills before applying. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why job ads that are just, a list of 100 skills are going to exclude women even before you start.
Yeah.
It's not good for hiring men either, but it particularly excludes women.
Definitely.
And overvaluing proofs such as certificates or years of experience is another one. Really quite meaningless in most situations. The saying is, you do they have 10 years experience, or do they have the same year of experience 10 times? It's still not looking at how people think. Can they actually bring something to the role? Most of the things that we're hiring for these days are knowledge work. We're looking for people with creativity and innovative thinking and all that sort of stuff. And our hiring processes have not caught up with that. So one of the things that I tend to do is cast a very broad net. So really, really, you must have these skills. If you've got more than 5, there's too many. You want to say, this is the absolute minimum bar in terms of skills. And then look at, how can I work out if this person thinks? So depending on what kind of role you're looking at hiring, you've got to think about, what are the actual attributes that I want. So, for example, I was hiring for a support guy. I needed him to be personable, be able to hold a conversation, and to be a good team player. So one of the things I put in the ad was, must be able to discuss philosophy over coffee. And out of all the piles of applicants we got, because I'd put the bar of skills very low, I could basically get rid of 90% of them because they didn't even mention that. They didn't engage with that. And the guy that I actually hired said, mine's an oat milk latte, but I reserve the right to show solidarity with my tea drinking brethren. He was my guy.
He actually read your position description.
Yes. and engage with it
And
and
yeah,
show that he's a human being.
yep, yep. But like it just the only problem, I guess, that we're bumping into, it's that again we're bumping into this problem of the time.
Yeah.
Because people write this skill list and stuff. It's just because they don't have time to sit down and thought about those things, you know, and just narrow it down to these 3 things that you mentioned and think like, that's actually what I want. We're coming back, I guess, to that circle of like, let the people make mistake. Let them post the wrong ad. Let them get the wrong candidates for the first ad and then improve it and try to get something new. But because we know that the skill list works and that's the easiest way to search and filter and things like that, we just, you know, obviously keep following that process.
Yeah. But also listen to your recruitment person. Who sometimes they give you good advice.
Especially if they know people for a while. That's another thing. So because if it's a lot of recruiters have like long-term relationship with people and know them from role to role.
Yeah, this person doesn't have these things that you've listed. They've only got 3 out of 20, but I think they're the right person for you.
Yeah. That's true. That's that. You kind of know if the person if you know the person personally, you know straight away if they're good fit for the team or not. Yeah. What else we got here? Is there anything we want to mention? We have 3 minutes left.
So basically, I've basically covered the points that were there with my example. It's you know, work out what you really need to succeed, cast a very wide net, don't exclude people through massive skills lists, but then put in something that really narrows the field in terms of that very specific thing that you want.
Definitely. I'm a hiring support person at the moment, so I'm gonna, you know, put that requirement for you and see who will read my app, and I'll let you know next week. Okay, Mel. So we have 2 minutes left. Let me just quickly do the announcement for next week, and you pick the winner of our virtual coffee chat. So if you scroll through the comments and decide who's gonna be a lucky winner. So guys, next week. So actually, not next week. The 7th of June, there is no live stream because I'm actually gonna do the live event, and we're having drinks with all the speakers in Melbourne. So that's a closed event. I didn't advertise it on the meetup because it's only open for people who following me for a while. So if you've been following me for a while and you know, want a few virtual coffee chats and stuff, and you want to come and join us for a drink next Wednesday, please send me a message on LinkedIn or Meetup, and I'll forward the invite for you. So it's invitation only. So obviously, if you're listening, if you're following, if you're commenting, you're welcome to come to the drinks next Wednesday. And the Wednesday after, on 14th of June, we're gonna talk with Vesa, and it's a burning topic, you know, of this financial year. The tips for thriving after redundancy in IT industry. Vesa personally just went through redundancy and kind of, I guess, changed the direction of his career, not direction of his career, but kind of like, you know, feel like it helped him to realize a lot of things and, you know, help him to set his career goals and stuff. So he's happy to share his recent experience and give some tips for everyone who in this situation at the moment. And Mel, while you were talking, did you find the winner for the virtual coffee chat?
I think it has to be James, seeing as he's just so many questions.
A lot of questions. So if we didn't have a, you know, answer, had a, you know, time to answer all your questions, James, Mel, you know, happy to take it offline and do the virtual coffee chat with you so you can continue the conversation. And Thank you so much, Mel, for your time. Obviously, guys, if you enjoyed the discussion, please make sure to like this video because it's encouraged me to keep going and keep bringing more people from my network to share their knowledge. And please, obviously, subscribe to my YouTube channel to make sure you get notified about upcoming events and can watch the replays. James is thanking, thank you, Mel. And just before I end this broadcast, Mel, just want to put you on the spot. Can you please share with us your favorite inspirational quote?
Angels float because they take themselves lightly.
I like it. I like it. Talking back, I think talking back about, if you can do something with ease and lightly, nothing wrong with that.
Yep. Don't get too
and
Yep.
and it doesn't mean that you need to work too hard sometimes to get things done. There is other ways in this life, and so there is actually possibility to achieve these things with ease in this life. I believe in it. I truly believe in it. So so guys, be an angels basically, and and don't take things too serious. So thank you so much, Mel, and I'll see everyone for drinks next week or online on the 14th of June. Thank you.